my name is Andrew, this is Road Wrenching. Behind me is my 2003 Yamaha Raptor 660R, and we are here today for a clutch. Now, I've already taken the front plastics off because I was doing some carb work and had the fuel tank and all that off. So front plastics are already off. If you want to see how those come off, I will link the video right there where I show you how that works. So front plastics are already off, and we're gonna be taking apart the clutch cover, which is this guy right here behind me. Now, to get to that, we're gonna need to pull off the Nerf bar, this foot peg, the brake pedal assembly here. We're also gonna pull the skid plate off the bottom, and that should give us access to all the bolts. It's a pretty straightforward job. All you gotta do is pull this water pump off. The water pump comes off with 4 bolts, oil filter comes off. Once those 2 are out, there is a bolt inside of there, bolts all the way around the clutch cover, and the whole clutch cover comes off.
The first thing that we're going to want to do before we get started with this repair is take some ATV oil that's designed for wet clutch and pour it in a basin like this and soak the clutch discs. We want to let these clutch discs soak for at least about an hour before we put them in. It's going to prevent premature wear once they're installed. Next, we're going to go ahead and take off all the peripheral items around this. So that's the plastic kind of heel guard there, the foot peg, the Nerf bar. And once all that stuff comes off, there's also the brake pedal assembly. There's a E-clip and then a couple of 10mm bolts. It comes right off. A couple of hex bolts in the bottom to pull this shield off the bottom.
All right, so all you gotta do is take out these 3 bolts, and then this water pump comes out and gets out of your way. And then pop these 2 hose clamps, and then this whole pump could come all the way out.
And here's what that water pump looks like removed.
So this back bolt in the corner right here, you get to it with a flex head ratcheting wrench like this one to get it out, to crack it loose. But the trick is, once that bolt is loose, it doesn't come all the way out. So just back it all the way out and let it hang, and then that bolt will come out when the whole cover comes out. So at this point, there's a bunch of 8mm bolts all the way around the housing, including inside of here, there's a bolt, and they work all the way around. So we disconnected this guy here, and there's a tab right in there. You have to bend up, and then the cable just comes right out, and then it just tucks up and out of the way there. There's an oil line right there you got to take off, and then also right there is another oil line. So these 2 lines come off, and then the bolts on the outside, and this whole cover slides off.
Once all the bolts are out of the cover, simply grab it and wiggle it. You'll see the oil dump out the bottom there. Make sure you have a good drain plan in place for that to catch that. It's a little bit of wiggling and fighting, but this cover does come out without too much fight there, as you see. Next, we're going to remove the bolts that retain the pressure plate. So we're just going to take those bolts and springs out. Once all of that is out of the way and set in a safe place, pull that center shaft and pull the clutch pressure plate off, and then slide any clutches that didn't come out with it out by grabbing them from the outside like this. What we're doing here is I'm separating the pressure plate from the clutch pack. So there's a bunch of different clutch discs and friction discs in here, and what I'm doing is I'm taking the clutch disc stack off and then setting it down, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take a disc, each layer we're going to take the disc or plate off, line it up with a new disc because these discs are different sizes, and then discard the old. So for each piece that comes off of the old clutch pack, we're lining it up with a new one and then reinstalling it. That way we get the same order and the right sizing and everything. And then piece by piece, then you take it off that stack and put it back into the clutch basket. There's a notch right there that lines up with an arrow here. So make sure those are lined up before you install the pressure plate. Once the pressure plate is in, we're going to go ahead and install our springs and the bolts that retain those. I'm just running them gently with an impact here, and then we're going to torque those to 70 inch-pounds. It's important these are torqued to the proper specifications so they don't come loose. Next, we're going to install our new cover. Now, the gasket goes on the block before the cover does, and then you slip the cover on. Then we're going to bolt the cover back to the engine block. There are 2 marks on the clutch arm and on the case there that need to line up. You pull that bolt out there and you can adjust it, but they need to line up before you put it back together. There's also these oil lines. Make sure you put the copper washers back in on both sides so that they seal. Once the clutch is installed, bend that tab back. You're going to set your adjustment with these nuts right here, and then you should have just a little bit of wiggle room there, not a lot, just enough to where there's free play, to where there's not tension on that arm once it's all adjusted. We're gonna take the old O-ring that seals the oil off the water pump and then put on the new one. I will leave the part number for that in the description below. This is installing the water pump back in, slip it into that hose on top, and then push it in. Once the oil filter and water pump are installed, you can refill the oil in the dry sump tank right there. Once that happens, let's go ahead and start it up to make sure that there's no leaks before we put back together all the peripheral stuff.
All of the parts used in this repair, including the gasket and the clutches themselves, were purchased off Amazon. Please check out the link in the description if you want to see where those came from. It's really a fairly affordable job to do. So that is the clutch replacement on a 2003 Yamaha Raptor 660R. This is going to be basically the same procedure for all of your 2001 through 2005 660 Raptors, and it's pretty straightforward. The biggest thing is to be really careful with the gasket. When you put the cover back on, it's really easy to tear that gasket. Always put the gasket on the case first. That way you reduce the chance of tearing it when you put the cover on. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.